So we've all heard by now we've all heard and seen the horrendous news from North Kensington in West London of the Tower Block Inferno. I often stay up late and I saw the initial news of this. I think it was on Yahoo News or something, one such site, and I didn't pay much notice because fires do happen, and it was only the next day. My local shopping centre has a TV screen, and I saw the news updates. I realised how serious this was. Um, I think it's difficult to comprehend the sheer nightmare of being in a building that is on fire and having no escape. It truly is horrendous. And that shell of the tower block is going to stand for some time, and it's going to be a haunting image in West London. It's really going to show us on a daily basis of the because the thing is you can't it's a dominant feature. It's something that people are going to see, and I think there's going to be a lot of post-traumatic stress brought about from this. A lot of counselling will be needed. um, so we've seen some awful things. I mean, people not sure where their family members are, and so on. We've also seen the best of London's community spirit. I mean, London really has been tested this year. Two major terrorist attacks and now this disaster. Sadiq Khan has had a very turbulent mayoralty in recent months, and I think that this is bringing back memories, perhaps, of a time in the late 80s when we saw a lot of big disasters in this country. I'll come back to that, but a lot of the source of the reason why this conflagration got as bad as it did seems to be down to cladding. Now, I'm not an architect and not an engineer, so just in layman's terms, as I understand it, this acted as a sort of it caused an almost ventilation type effect, whereby the flames from the lower floor, as I understand this, broke out in the fourth floor, went up almost like a funneling effect. Alarms were not working. There was no sprinkler system installed, and I've heard several reports saying that it was a faulty fridge caused this. One resident who escaped said that he believed that it was his fridge. Um, Clearly, the sadness and shock is growing into anger, and that's understandable because apparently residents had been raising concerns for some time, and reviews had not been carried out to the fullest. And there have been other points of concern. I'm not going to vilify anyone. I'm not going to say I think this council's responsible, this organisation's responsible, this government department's responsible. I think that something that this comes down to collective responsibility, and it is part of human nature that when disaster happens, people want someone to blame. I'm not saying that's not applicable because it does look like there was serious negligence issues here. And Jeremy Corbyn has pointed that out. He's vowed to raise the concerns that people are bringing about. Sadiq Khan was in fact heckled as he visited the site. The Prime Minister was also at the site. This is almost certainly the deadliest fire this country has experienced since King's Cross in 1987. At the moment, the death toll is 17. 18 people remain in intensive care, but this building was home to 400 to 600 people. I haven't seen an exact figure anywhere. Of course, people will have had guests. It's very difficult to have an exact number on something like this. So, in the worst case scenario, we may be looking at a three-figure death toll, which would be utterly horrendous. But even outside those who have died and have been injured, many people have been rendered homeless permanently. So this is really a humanitarian crisis. Now, that part of West London, I'm not overly familiar with it, but I know West London better than other parts of London from my visits there. And Kensington itself, well, in the rest of the country, we see Kensington as a very affluent area. It has some of the most expensive properties in the country, which is true. But there's another side to Kensington which has been brutally exposed by this disaster. which is actually some of the poorest aspects of the country. Um, so there's a cruel irony with that, that it's taken a disaster to expose that. And it's also something that in the UK we always stick our nose up at health and safety, but it's sad and unfortunate that it takes a disaster of this scale to remind us that health and safety has a purpose. And if it does appear that, for example, the lack of sprinklers and alarms that are not working caused this, then clearly that needs to be reviewed. The same with cladding. I don't think it should be a case that aesthetics are seen as more important than safety, if that is indeed the case. So there's going to be a lot of people with very, very difficult jobs over the months ahead. A lot of people facing a lot of heat, and it's I don't take any sort of vindictive attitude to that. I'm not like I hope this person's prosecuted or whatever, but I can understand the anger. I can definitely understand that if people have lost loved ones and lost their homes. It's one of the worst things I can imagine. I want to mention that there has been a number of other infernos around the world in high-rise buildings. In Shanghai in 2010, big disaster, 58 people died. In Metro Manila about 2 years ago, again in a high-rise building, mass casualties. And there has, indeed earlier this year in Tehran, the Tehran disaster cost 31 lives. Again, it was an old building from the 1970s. And there has been other incidents in Melbourne, in Moscow, and in Dubai. So I think the investigators are going to be looking at other precedents around the world and seeing if there's anything that we can learn from this. I also think of a time, like I say, in the late 80s, this country had a long string of many of which were preventable disasters, beginning in 1985 up to 1989. It was just one thing after another. The Bradford Stadium fire, the Manchester Airport plane fire, the M1 plane crash, the King's Cross escalator fire, the Herald of Free Enterprise sinking, the Marchioness disaster, which is, in my opinion, being completely forgotten. That was a collision on the River Thames, over 50 people drowned. Of course, Hillsborough is well known. And the Lockerbie disaster, well, Lockerbie, of course, was a terrorist incident, but this was one thing after another. The Clapham Junction derailment was another example. Collision. These disasters were all within months of one another, and it was simply one after another. The 1990s and 2000s and 2010s, we haven't seen so many disasters on that scale so close to one another, but this is certainly one of the worst incidents the London Fire Service has ever had to see. When I was in my mid-teens, I was in something called the YFA, the Young Firefighters Association, which was basically like the Army Cadets. You experienced what life was like as a firefighter. You didn't go to actual drills, but they set it up so that it was as realistic as possible. You wore a uniform. You went into buildings that were darkened. You had to rescue dummies, mannequins. And I got a little bit of a taste of just how difficult the job is. Obviously, it wasn't the real thing, but they did set it up to be basically a training for what that life would be like. And a lot of things have come out of this, obviously the anger and the questions, but there has also been enormous praise once again for the emergency services, which is just astonishing, the bravery these people have. But also, it's showing aside to London, we often think of London as a big, demanding, everyone in it for themselves city. Well, this disaster and the two terrorist attacks, incidentally, Borough Market has just reopened, which was, of course, badly hit by the London Bridge attack. But it's showing that, people have come together and they have donated food, they've donated items. Local churches, local mosques, community centres have really done their part. They've opened the doors. Fulham Football Club, Queen's Park Rangers Football Club have opened up. Lily Allen, the singer, and other celebrities have offered help. It's really shown the spirit of London, and that is something that absolutely is a great testament to our capital city. But this is a horrible disaster, and I hope nothing like this ever happens again. I remember seeing, I believe it was a Seconds from Disaster documentary on King's Cross, on the King's Cross fire in 1987, and I remember thinking how horrendous that must have been. Well, it must have been similar the other nights in the Grenfell Tower. I imagine people in tower blocks across London and indeed the country are going to be somewhat concerned. I myself have actually spent a bit of tonight looking at the appliances in my house. I live in an old Victorian house. We have some things here that were here when we came. I actually brought my fridge out tonight, just got a bit of the dust out of the back, not out of paranoia, just as a precaution. You can't gamble with safety, and I would really implore everyone watching this. It's not a trivial issue. I remember at university having an argument with a guy because he was actually putting cigarette ash out in a plastic bin liner, and I did lose my temper because it was just so stupid, just so totally. We used to have a problem at my university down in Wolverhampton because the fire brigade constantly had to come out because of the fire alarms going off in students' accommodation, usually over stupid things like people smoking in kitchens and so on. These were very sensitive fire alarms, but I used to feel bad because it felt like they were wasting their time through students just being reckless. And I was on the student council, so it was my job to kind of keep my eye on these sort of things. So yeah, there's not really much more to say. I just hope this investigation, I hope lessons are learned, and that sounds like an awful cliche, but one of the worst things about this is people have lost everything, who've lost family members, who've lost their homes. It's difficult to imagine this is happening in the United Kingdom, but horrendous situation, but tempered by the enormous generosity and support of the community, which really is a testament to North Kensington and London in general. A few other disasters around the world, of course, going on right now. There's been terrible landslides in Bangladesh, apparently some of the worst in living memory. 140 people at least have perished. And in China, in the city of Suzhou, there has been a gas explosion at a kindergarten and 7 children have died. So there's always something happening in the world, and my heart goes out to people who are caught up in these disasters wherever they happen. And one type of person I always think about is, of course, the emergency services, but also those who have to, for example, inform people that their relatives have passed away, those who are involved in counselling. These are very difficult jobs, and obviously work slightly differently in each country, but yeah, I really am thinking about the people of North Kensington tonight. It's horrendous. So thank you for watching, and let me know your thoughts, especially if you live in the area.